the story of Eden, or there is no such thing, never has been, nor will there ever be a perfect place or person. Aidan Ballou, an early Universalist and a cousin of the founding figure of Universalism, Hosea Ballou, tried, as did Bronson Alcott, to build utopian communities, one in Hopedale, Massachusetts, and the other in Harvard, Massachusetts. And all attempts at building utopian paradises fail because of human agency and human actions, because humans mess it up. How, you ask? By asking questions, by imagining more and different approaches, by exploring what ifs, by wondering if so and how and why. In a word, by exercising that amazing human trait, free will. In fact, if we stand the myth of the Garden of Eden on its head, I can see that the story is meant actually to affirm human agency, to affirm the exercise of free will, not to label humans as good or evil or sinners, but as beings who have and have always had the ability to raise questions, have wonderments, and will always want the ability to choose. When Adam and Eve chose, and why did they choose? They chose not to remain in total dependency upon an allegedly beneficent force, but to gain the wisdom to ascertain the wisdom to know the difference between good and bad. And what were the results of that choice? They were the realization that life is hard, that struggle, strife, pain, and challenge come along with living, and that families and clans and groups must interact with one another. Admittedly, Genesis story from the Old Testament or Hebrew scriptures is the mythical story of a clan descending from Adam and Eve, trying to attempt to get along with others. They sometimes did this very poorly. And over the reminder in these ancient stories is that the more the clans attempted to isolate, to control, to take over rather than work with others, the more strife, war, and turmoil came into their lives. For me, the whole story of Adam and Eve is about and supports the exercise of free will, the innate and indisputable trait that makes us humans human. The myth also exposes the reality of being human. Life is hard. It is loss, it is pain, it is struggle, and the end is death. But as Unitarian Universalists, our collective liberation is not found by imagining or looking at the end, but by looking at how we can use the gifts of free will to make the world better here and now. Not a perfect world, not an idealized world, not working with all the muck and the mud and the messiness, using all of our traits and skills with one another, not to seek perfection, but connection and relatedness, where we find the strength, courage, fortitude to continue on in spite of what life deals us. We carry on because we explore options, we make mistakes, we bungle and bump up against life. And most of all, we get on because of the communities, the units we are a part of. The building, the forging, and forming of connections with others is a process that helps, if not heal us, at least offers pathways for spiritual, psychic, emotional growth and or transformation through deeper connections. And my desire is for us to challenge and give up a notion that there is an ideal being, time, place, When those mythical beings, Adam and Eve, made a choice to experience, experiment, imagine, even while knowing that that exercise of free will would bring about trouble, they created an interdependence with one another, which led to a widening circle of human interaction and connection. Adam and Eve made a choice, and it was not about being good or bad humans. It was about gaining the knowledge of what is good and bad. Metaphorically, they gained the ability to discern, to learn, and gain wisdom through experiences. The unfolding story of human existence was a result of the exercise of free will. It led to the beginning of family, which became a larger unit and then a clan, a group of related folks who had to learn how to interact with other clans and groups. So let this cautionary myth be a reminder that if we stay closed off, or if we keep members of our family or clan around us only, who we imagine are just like us, we run the risk of becoming closed, isolated, territorial, and insulated. But just the opposite of what we now know is the healthiest interconnectedness. The Eden myth of perfection is, in my opinion, a cautionary tale against reliance on the smallest unit of existence, and that impedes relationships across barriers and boundaries. Because we have free will, we can and we do good or bad. And that is why we need models and mentors, churches and structures within which we can learn ways of acting healthy and of making corrections when we act badly. It is the Unitarian Universalist way to allow and in fact, to encourage explorations while striving to provide an environment where we can discuss, learn, worship, and transform. Do you remember the movie The Truman Show, when the character played by Jim Carrey has lived his entire life in a giant Hollywood dome in a perfect little bubble where his whole life was formed and framed, dependent and totally controlled by external and powerful forces? It was only when he began to question and to wonder that he was able to gain selfhood and develop deeply meaningful relationships. And until we interact with others, until we break out of our bubble of idealized Eden, we are stuck. And imagination, creativity, and connections will be prescribed by others. Do you want to live in a perfection play? I was remembering an experience when I went to China in 2008. The opportunity for a 10-day trip offered through the Central Mass Chamber of Commerce came up. The price was exceptionally reasonable. All accommodations would be arranged, and all travel and tours with an English-speaking guide were a part of it. The director of the chamber and his spouse had gone first, and they assured me it was safe, very comfortable, and interesting. So I encouraged my best friend to travel with me. We knew that because it was a commerce tour, we would be visiting businesses and industries in China. And both of us are UU ministers, so we figured it would be enlightening to see and learn about a people and a culture and the business practices that we knew nothing about. And two stories came to mind when I was thinking about connection, not perfection. A major goal of the Chinese government, which had control over the chamber tours, was to project an image of perfection. The jade factory workers and shopping, the herbalist, which is the pharmaceutical industry, workers and shopping, the tree farm workers and shopping, each projected an ideal concept. But there was a reveal, the reveal at the silk factory. By this point, all 14 of us on the tour knew the routine: breakfast and be at the bus by 7:30 a.m. and then have a guided ride to the factories to see the best run industries providing jobs so that every citizen, our tour guide informed us, could have a job. He assured us in China and Beijing, where we were, there was no unemployment, even if the elderly, stooped, bent over woman had a job of sweeping the intersection of the major highway as vehicles and bicycles whizzed by her at dangerous and dizzying speed. She was paid. She had a job, he assured us. And we knew that after each visit to a factory, we would be ushered into the government-run store and be given the opportunity to buy the goods. One of our tours was at the silk factory. We pulled into a perfectly clean parking lot and were greeted by a perfectly poised hostess, just as was with every other tour. The tour was fascinating, and each step of making silk was precisely explained. We moved through stations with workers that demonstrated separating the threads the silkworms had spun, and we moved through stations which demonstrated how these threads were woven together to be prepared for drying and dyeing and weaving. And we watched as workers hustled and bustled around us, preparing and weaving cloth and silk fans and screens and the picture that was at the front of the order of service. They truly are works of art. The tour followed a path and a prescribed order, and within 30 minutes, we were corralled toward the shopping area. And my friend and I had to use the bathroom, and we had spotted one in the entryway when we first came in. And so rather than following the group to go shopping area, we decided we would walk back through the industry factory to the facilities. We couldn't have been more than 5 minutes from the end of the production display to the shopping tour when we turned back. And we were shocked to see that not one single person, not one single worker was left in the area. Everything was abandoned, covered over, and totally devoid of any living being. The perfect environment and the enterprise we had just witnessed moments ago was a stage show, a make-believe place. Perfection, yes, but not a single connection to the workers who needed a job, but whose hour of labor was staged for showing a perfect setting for observers. No connection to the life of each other, to family, or the larger community. A perfect picture, but when peeled back, an empty shell. And I often use and think of that experience when I think of institutions, organizations, groups, and churches. Do I want the appearance of perfection, or do I want the messiness and imperfection of connections? Do I want everything arranged in perfect appearance, or do I want to explore, question, challenge, learn, interact? You know my answer. I want the exercise of free will. I even want the brokenness, the mistakes, the struggles. And yes, even the pain is better than an empty shell. How else can I grow? How else can I learn to be a human being living with others, or how to challenge when systems try to box me into an idealized view of something? And that reminds me of my second story. Going back into that production space and seeing that the workers were being exploited to entertain us, and that we were being used as a setup to go into the store to buy things, awoke a part of me that will confront justices in ways that I can when I see them. The next day we were due to tour a rug factory, and of course to go to the store. When we got on the bus before our tour guide joined the group, I had an idea. From now on, I said, rather than hanging around the store till our guide lets us out, we could just walk in, out to the bus. However, if anyone wanted to buy something, we'd make a commitment to stay with that person until they signaled us that the transaction was done. And then we would all move en masse out to the bus. It worked well at the rug factory where no one was buying, and in every store thereafter, we had our signals down pat. So We're not at the mercy of those trying to make us buy goods we did not want, or that was exploiting the workers. Our connection as community led us to confront at least some injustices, and it did not disempower the tour guide or put him in harm's way, for after all, he too was at the mercy of a system that intended to control. And this is one of the wonderful things about community. They're not perfect, but they can support one another when necessary, or challenge when needed, and can imagine new ways of acting and being if the group functions from a larger vision. And finally, I want to share about termites. Yeah, termites as a model of communities functioning well together. Lewis Thomas, a research pathologist, likes to use examples found in nature to illustrate interrelatedness and the connectedness between oneness and community. He believes the termite to be one of the 7 wonders of the natural world. Thomas says a single solitary termite, functionally speaking, is nothing at all. It has no purpose, no reason to exist. Even 2 or 3 termites gathered together on a dish are no better. He says they just run around, knocking each other about, and nothing happens. But he reports, if you keep adding more termites, they will reach a critical mass, and then something extraordinary occurs. They are not just individuals touching each other, but they become a cohesive unit that begins to stack up pellets to precisely the right height, to build the arches that connect the columns, that forms the chamber in which the colony will live out its life in a healthy, safe environment that sustains him. He says, they are not the dense mass of individual insects they appear to be, but an organism, a thoughtful, meditative brain on 1,000,000 legs. They are the organic structure that comes together to form a functioning community in which to grow, change, live, and become. Church is like this. It is not a perfect place, yet it is a place that has an internal structure, an organism on 1,000,000 legs, guided by a mission and a vision, held together by staff and board and members and committees that function together to form and build a unit of nurture, a place to challenge one another, to confront any unhealthy assumptions about how things should be. It is a place in which to live and move, breathe and be. Is any church perfect? No, because it is made up of humans who should value connection more than perfection. So let us strive to build together a place to be connected, a place to offer support, challenge, nurture, and compassion. We do need one another, so let us be about that sacred task. May it be so.